We're still waiting to hear, though, about the thousands of children who are already separated and if they're going to be reunited with their parents. Joining me now from Texas, the mayor of Miami, Republican Francis Suarez. Mayor, thank you so much for joining me. I spent the last few days in Texas. I could not get any access. Tell me what you're about to see and who else is with you.
Well, I'm here with the Conference of Mayors. Steve Benjamin, the president of the Conference of Mayors, asked me to join him for a bipartisan group of mayors to see what's going on here in this facility in Tornillo, Texas, where there are apparently thousands of kids who have been separated from their parents. We still don't know whether the executive action is going to reunite those children with their parents. We don't know what kind of condition the kids are living in. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions. We don't know why we haven't been able to get access to the facility, or why people are being denied access to facilities around the United States. It all creates a tremendous amount of suspicion. And so as mayor, we don't look at things from a partisan perspective. We look at this as a humanitarian issue, as an issue that goes to the morality of our country, and something that needs to be solved immediately for the betterment of all.
For sure, this is not a political issue. This is a morality issue. Tornillo, where that tent city is being erected, are you concerned at all about the massive expense to the American taxpayer? This is going to cost tens of millions of dollars to enact. And the fact that the administration has given us no transparency to understand why they're doing it, are they doing it, and see inside, does that concern you at a time when budgets matter?
You know, frankly, as the son of Cuban immigrants and the father of two children, my main concern is the parents that have been separated from their children, the trauma that children may be undergoing at this very moment. We had Pedro Bang, which was an operation when Cubans fled Cuba, where they were separated from their families to come to the United States. And I have had messages from many of them relaying the trauma that they still feel more than 40, 50 years ago. So I think that's the bigger concern right now. We want to make sure that these children are relocated with their families immediately, what kind of conditions they're in, and why are we not being allowed to see the facility.
Do you have any information as to how they're going to do that? I mean, to the best of our knowledge, the kids were not photographed before they left. You know, they don't have any sort of bracelet or identification on them. And the zero tolerance policy was put in place rather quickly. And we haven't heard any plans yet of how logistically reunification would work. Do you know?
No, we don't, and I think it creates a lot of suspicion when facilities across the United States are being denied access to federal elected officials. It would be as if I decided I wanted to go into my police department when I came home on Friday and was told I couldn't walk into my police department building. I mean, things that just don't make any sense, and they create suspicion. So I think I'm certainly happy that the president executed that executive order, but I think that there are a tremendous amount of unanswered questions that go to the very heart of this issue, which is a separation of children from their family.
You've got one of these facilities in your area in Florida that HHS put in place. Could you get in there?
I couldn't. I tried to get in there before coming over here.
And what did they tell
to
you?
Tornillo, and certainly.
What? I get it when I try to walk in and they say you're a journalist, beat it. But you're the mayor.
Yeah, they've been telling us the same thing they're telling us here, which is you have to apply. It's a process. It takes forever. It takes a couple of weeks, and it just doesn't make sense. Again, like I said, the example that I gave, if I wanted to walk into my own police department, I don't have to file an application. I don't have to wait a minute. I mean, it would be crazy to think that as a government official, I couldn't walk into any facility of the city of Miami to find out at any given moment what's going on, particularly if there are concerns that something may be going on that's not proper or appropriate.
Mayor, thank you so much. And please, to our audience, again, this is not political. This is not partisan. That's the mayor of Miami who was denied access to a facility in his own area, saying he needed to fill out a form and apply for it. That simply makes no sense. So we're going to keep asking why.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.